What if the hardest part of your life is not your work, your problems, or your responsibilities? What if it is the quiet habit of always wanting life to be different from what it is right now? Most people never notice this habit because it feels normal. They keep searching for peace while unknowingly pushing it farther away. Long before our busy world existed, someone saw this pattern with remarkable clarity. His answer was simple, yet it still has the power to change the way you experience every ordinary day. There is a quiet kind of tiredness that sleep never seems to reach. It follows you into the morning before the day has even begun. It waits in the silence between notifications, meetings, conversations, and plans. You keep moving because stopping feels unfamiliar. Yet somewhere beneath the movement, there is a feeling that something essential has been left behind. Life rarely asks for your attention, one piece at a time. It arrives all at once, a growing list of responsibilities, new ambitions that replace the old before they have even been fulfilled, messages waiting for replies, decisions that cannot be postponed, endless opportunities that somehow become endless obligations. Days become so full that there is barely enough room to notice how quickly they disappear. Most people never question this rhythm because it surrounds everyone they know. Busy has become another word for valuable. Constant activity is mistaken for purpose. The faster the world moves, the more natural it seems to run alongside it, even when every step leaves the mind a little more restless than before. The strange part is that the things we chase often promise exactly what they quietly take away. We work harder to find freedom, yet our schedules grow heavier. We collect more possessions in search of comfort, yet each new possession asks for attention. We pursue recognition, believing that once we are finally seen, something inside will settle. But the finish line has a habit of moving just as we think we have reached it. Without noticing, life becomes an endless preparation for a future that never fully arrives. There is always one more goal, one more improvement, one more achievement that seems certain to complete the picture. And because tomorrow always appears more important than today, the present slowly fades into the background, becoming little more than a bridge to somewhere else. The mind learns this habit well. Even in moments of stillness, it refuses to remain still. It replays conversations that cannot be changed. It imagines problems that have not yet appeared. It compares one life against another until gratitude quietly slips away. The body may be sitting peacefully, but the mind continues running through invisible landscapes, searching for something it cannot quite name. Perhaps that is why genuine silence can feel uncomfortable at first. When there is nothing demanding your attention, another voice becomes impossible to ignore. It asks simple questions that busyness has kept hidden. Am I actually living or only managing my life? When did I become so far away from myself? Why does everything seem to move faster, while peace feels increasingly distant? These questions are not signs that something has gone wrong. They are signs that something has begun to awaken. Beneath the endless noise remains a quiet awareness that remembers life was never meant to feel like an endless race. It recognizes that movement alone is not the same as direction, and that a crowded calendar cannot guarantee a peaceful heart. Few people deliberately choose complexity. It gathers slowly, almost invisibly. One extra commitment seems harmless. One more expectation feels manageable. One more distraction appears insignificant. Yet over time, these small additions become the air we breathe. until simplicity begins to seem unrealistic, almost impossible. And so we continue searching for peace by adding one more solution to an already crowded life, rarely considering that what we seek may not be found through addition at all. It is a possibility that feels almost unfamiliar today, yet thousands of years ago, long before glowing screens, crowded cities, or relentless ambition shaped human lives, someone quietly observed the same restless pattern within the human heart and offered a path so simple that many overlook it before they truly see it. Long before the world learned to measure success by speed, there was a man who quietly noticed something that most people overlooked. He did not search for louder answers or more complicated explanations. He simply watched. He watched rivers find their way without force. He watched trees bend with the wind instead of resisting it. He watched seasons arrive and leave without anxiety over what came next. In those ordinary movements, he recognized a truth that still feels almost impossible to accept. The world remembers him as Lao Tzu, yet his wisdom does not survive because of his name. It survives because human nature has changed far less than the world around it. Our tools have become faster, our cities have grown larger, our lives have become more connected than ever before. But the quiet fears hidden beneath our daily routines are strikingly familiar. The longing to become enough, the fear of falling behind, the hope that one more achievement will finally bring rest. These are not modern struggles. They have always lived within the human heart. What made Lao Tzu remarkable was not that he escaped the world. It was that he refused to be hypnotized by it. While many searched for influence, he became interested in understanding. While others tried to shape the world according to their desires, he became curious about the deeper order already present beneath its surface. He sensed that life was not as chaotic as it appeared. Much of the chaos came from the mind, insisting that reality should be different from what it was. This was a radical way of seeing. Most people believe peace comes after life is finally under control. We imagine that if every uncertainty disappeared, if every plan unfolded exactly as expected, calm would naturally follow. Yet the more tightly we try to arrange the world, the more fragile our peace becomes. Every unexpected event feels like a threat. Every delay becomes frustration. Every change seems like something to resist. Lao Tzu saw another possibility. He noticed that nature never argued with itself. Rivers did not compete with mountains. Clouds did not hurry across the sky. A seed never struggled to become a tree overnight. Everything matured according to its own rhythm. And because of that quiet trust, life continued with astonishing balance. This did not mean becoming passive or abandoning responsibility. It meant understanding the difference between effort and struggle. Effort grows from clarity. Struggle often grows from fear. One moves naturally toward what needs to be done. The other is driven by the constant belief that life must always be pushed, controlled, or conquered before it can be enjoyed. Perhaps this is why simplicity is so often misunderstood. Many hear the word and imagine giving things up, living with less, or rejecting the comforts of the modern world. But Lao Tzu was pointing towards something far deeper. Simplicity is not measured by the number of things around you. It is measured by the amount of conflict within you. A person surrounded by abundance may live simply if the heart remains unburdened. Another may own almost nothing and still carry a mind crowded with endless desire. That insight quietly changes everything. It suggests that peace is not hidden somewhere beyond the next accomplishment. It is not waiting at the end of a perfect plan. It begins whenever the need to constantly force life begins to soften. Yet this raises a difficult question. If harmony is already woven into life itself, why do so many people experience the opposite? Why does the mind resist what nature accepts so effortlessly? Why does it cling, compare, predict, and control until even peaceful moments become filled with noise? Lao Tzu understood that before we can simplify our lives, we must first notice the place where complexity is created. It is rarely the world outside us. More often, it begins in the restless movement of the mind itself. The realization that life does not become complicated on its own leads to an even quieter discovery. Complexity often begins long before a decision is made or a problem appears. It begins in the unseen habits of the mind. Long before our hands reach for more, the mind has already imagined that more is necessary. It rarely announces itself. It whispers instead. It says that peace is just beyond the next accomplishment. That confidence will arrive after one more success. That happiness is waiting somewhere in the future, carefully hidden behind another milestone. The promise feels convincing because it is never entirely false. Achievements do bring satisfaction. New experiences do bring joy. But the feeling is strangely brief. Almost before it has settled, the mind begins searching again. This is one of its oldest patterns. The moment one desire is fulfilled, another quietly takes its place. What once seemed extraordinary soon becomes ordinary. What once felt like enough slowly becomes the new starting point. Without realizing it, we begin climbing a staircase that has no final step. The strange thing is that the mind does not only want possessions, it also wants identities. It wants to become someone who is admired, respected, successful, indispensable, or unforgettable. There is nothing wrong with growth or meaningful work. Yet when identity depends entirely on becoming someone else, the person who already exists is quietly pushed aside. Many people spend years improving themselves while never feeling closer to themselves. Every accomplishment becomes evidence that another accomplishment is necessary. Every compliment creates the fear of no longer deserving it. Every victory carries the pressure to repeat it. What appears from the outside as confidence can sometimes be an endless negotiation with self-worth. Comparison deepens the illusion. In earlier times, comparison was limited to the people nearby. Today, the mind can measure itself against thousands of lives before breakfast. Someone always seems wealthier, more talented, more attractive, more accomplished. The mind gathers these fragments and quietly builds the conclusion that everyone else is moving forward while it has somehow fallen behind. Yet comparisons are rarely honest. We compare our private doubts with someone else's public moments. We measure our unfinished journey against another person's carefully selected destination. Even when we understand this intellectually, the emotional habit remains surprisingly strong. Lao Tzu observed this tendency long before there were screens to amplify it. He recognized that the mind becomes unsettled whenever it clings too tightly to what it imagines life should be. Desire itself is not the enemy. It is attachment to desire that quietly steals peace. The moment happiness becomes dependent on one particular outcome, every other moment begins to feel incomplete. Notice how often the mind postpones life. It says, "When this project is finished, I will rest." Then another project appears. "When I have more security, I will relax." Then new fears emerge. "When everything is finally in place, I will enjoy the present." Yet the present keeps passing, while the conditions for happiness continue changing. There is another hidden fear beneath this pattern. It is the fear of missing the life we believe others are living. Even moments of contentment become interrupted by the thought that somewhere else, something better might be happening. Instead of fully inhabiting the life before us, attention keeps reaching toward lives that exist only in imagination. The mind calls this ambition. Sometimes it is, but often it is simply restlessness wearing the clothes of purpose. Nature offers a different image. A river does not envy another river because it reaches the sea by a different path. An oak does not hurry because the pine grows taller. Nothing living becomes itself by comparing its rhythm with everything around it. Each follows its own unfolding, and in doing so, nothing essential is lost. Human beings possess a remarkable gift. We can imagine futures that do not yet exist. That gift has built civilizations, created works of beauty, and solved impossible problems. Yet the same imagination can become a prison when it convinces us that life is always somewhere other than here. This is why the deepest exhaustion is often invisible. It is not created by the body alone. It comes from carrying countless versions of ourselves that we believe we must become before we are finally allowed to feel at peace. The question, then, is no longer how to gain more from the world. It becomes something far quieter. What if the struggle itself is adding weight to what was never meant to be carried? What if some forms of effort move us forward, while others only tighten the knot we are trying so desperately to untie? If much of our suffering begins with the way the mind struggles against life, then another possibility quietly appears. Perhaps peace is not found by trying harder. Perhaps it begins when we stop creating unnecessary resistance. This idea feels almost uncomfortable at first. We have been taught that every worthwhile result demands constant effort. Push harder, plan further, control every outcome. If something is not working, apply more force. The habit becomes so familiar that doing less can seem irresponsible, even dangerous. Yet, there is a difference between meaningful effort and endless struggle. And Lao Tzu spent his life pointing toward that difference. He described it through an idea that has often been misunderstood. It is called Wu Wei, a phrase that is sometimes translated as effortless action. At first glance, it sounds like doing nothing, but that was never its meaning. It does not ask us to abandon our responsibilities or drift through life without purpose. It asks something far more subtle. It asks whether our actions arise from harmony or from resistance. Think about breathing. It keeps you alive every moment, yet you accomplish it without strain. The moment you begin forcing each breath, something that was natural suddenly becomes awkward. The body already knows what to do when it is trusted. Nature offers the same lesson again and again. Water never argues with the rocks in its path. It does not demand that the mountain move aside. It simply continues. Sometimes it flows around an obstacle. Sometimes it wears through stone with quiet patience. It appears soft, yet over time it shapes entire landscapes. Its strength comes not from force, but from its willingness to follow its nature. A tree survives storms for a similar reason. The branches that refuse to bend are often the first to break. The ones that move with the wind remain standing after the storm has passed. Flexibility is not weakness. It is another form of strength, one that does not waste energy, fighting what cannot be controlled. Human beings often choose the opposite. We tighten our grip when life becomes uncertain. We resist changes that have already arrived. We replay the past, trying to rewrite moments that no longer exist. We rush toward futures that cannot be forced into existence. Then we wonder why everything feels so exhausting. There are moments when you have probably experienced Wu Wei without giving it a name. A conversation that unfolded naturally because you stopped rehearsing every sentence. Creative work that seemed to flow without effort because you were fully present instead of worrying about the outcome. A walk where your thoughts became quiet without trying to silence them. In those moments, action remained, but struggle disappeared. The mind often mistakes control for security. It believes that if every possibility is anticipated, disappointment can be avoided. Yet control is rarely complete. The harder we cling to certainty, the more fragile we become when life inevitably changes. Trust does not eliminate uncertainty. It changes our relationship with it. This is why effortless action is not passive. It is deeply attentive. It responds instead of reacting. It listens before insisting. It moves when movement is needed and remains still when stillness serves better. It does not waste energy forcing open doors that are not ready to open, nor does it remain frozen when the path becomes clear. Even the changing seasons remind us of this quiet wisdom. Spring does not rush winter away. Summer does not fear autumn. Each arrives when its time has come. Nothing in nature appears anxious about falling behind, because nothing measures its worth by speed. Imagine how much of your own energy is spent resisting what has already happened or trying to control what has not yet arrived. The burden often feels like life itself, but much of it is created by the invisible tension of constantly pushing against reality. When that tension softens, something remarkable begins to emerge. The same life that once felt overwhelming starts to feel more spacious, not because the world has changed, but because the struggle within it has become lighter. This shift does not happen all at once. It begins with small moments of trust, a willingness to pause before reacting, a decision to let some things unfold at their own pace, the quiet recognition that not every problem requires immediate force and not every unanswered question demands an instant solution. As that way of living grows, another change quietly follows. The urge to control experiences gradually gives way to a different relationship with the things we own, the things we pursue, and the things we believe we cannot live without. Once we stop trying to force life into perfect order, another truth quietly comes into view. The struggle was never carried only in the mind. Over the years, it has spread into everything we hold on to, not just the things we own, but the things we believe we cannot lose. Most burdens are invisible. They have no weight in the hands, yet they weigh heavily on the heart. They gather slowly, almost unnoticed, until they become so familiar that we mistake them for part of who we are. Possessions are the easiest to recognize. We spend years collecting objects that promise comfort, convenience, or security. At first, each new acquisition feels like a small improvement. Yet every possession quietly asks for something in return. It must be maintained, protected, organized, upgraded, or replaced. The more we own, the more of our attention becomes scattered among the things that were meant to simplify our lives. But material possessions are only the surface. There are heavier things we carry that cannot be placed on a shelf. We collect opinions with the same determination. We defend them as though changing our minds would diminish our worth. A disagreement becomes a personal threat because our beliefs have quietly become part of our identity. Instead of seeing ideas as tools for understanding, we begin wearing them like armor. The armor feels safe, yet it also keeps us from moving freely. Expectations create another kind of weight. We build careful pictures of how life should unfold, how people should treat us, how success should arrive, how relationships should remain unchanged. When reality refuses to follow those invisible plans, disappointment is often born not from life itself, but from the distance between what is and what we insisted it must become. Perhaps the heaviest burden of all is the identity we spend a lifetime constructing. We tell ourselves stories about who we are: the successful one, the responsible one, the intelligent one, the person who never fails, the one who always pleases others. At first, these identities seem harmless. They give us direction. Yet over time, they become roles we feel compelled to protect, even when they no longer reflect who we truly are. Lao Tzu understood that freedom begins where unnecessary attachment ends. He did not suggest abandoning the world or rejecting everything we love. His invitation was gentler than that. Hold life with open hands instead of clenched fists. Appreciate what is present without believing your peace depends upon its permanence. Nature never clings to its own expressions. A tree does not mourn every leaf that falls. The river does not attempt to hold yesterday's water. The sky never resists the passing of clouds. Everything changes, and because nature allows change, nothing becomes trapped. Human beings often do the opposite. We try to preserve moments that have already passed. We resist endings that quietly make room for new beginnings. We carry old disappointments into new chapters, allowing yesterday's weight to shape today's experience. Letting go is often misunderstood. It is not forgetting. It is not pretending something never mattered. It is the quiet willingness to stop carrying what no longer serves the journey ahead. Sometimes the greatest act of wisdom is not adding another solution, but setting down a burden that was never ours to carry forever. When something unnecessary falls away, an unexpected feeling often appears. Space. Not empty space that asks to be filled, but living space. Room to breathe before reacting. Room to listen instead of defend. Room to notice simple moments that were hidden beneath constant mental noise. In that spaciousness, even ordinary experiences begin to feel different. A quiet morning, a shared meal, the sound of rain, a slow walk without urgency. None of these become extraordinary because the world has changed. They become extraordinary because attention is no longer crowded. This is the freedom hidden within simplicity. It is not measured by how little you own or how perfectly organized your life appears. It is measured by how lightly you move through the world, by how easily you can welcome change without losing yourself, by how little your peace depends on circumstances remaining exactly as you imagined. And after enough has been gently released, an even deeper question begins to emerge. If you are not defined by your possessions, your achievements, your opinions, or even the stories you tell about yourself, then what remains? The answer does not lie in owning less alone. It waits in a place untouched by everything that can be gained or lost, where simplicity is no longer something you create around your life, but something you discover at the very center of your awareness. After enough has been set down, something unexpected begins to reveal itself. Not another idea, not another goal, simply a quietness that had been waiting beneath everything else. It is easy to overlook because it never competes for attention. It does not demand to be noticed. It remains present through every season of life, even when the mind is too busy to recognize it. Like the sky hidden behind passing clouds, it has never disappeared. Only our attention has wandered elsewhere. Many people spend years searching for peace as though it were a distant destination. They imagine it waiting at the end of the perfect career, the perfect relationship, the perfect version of themselves. Yet every time one destination is reached, another appears beyond it. The search continues, not because peace is absent, but because it is being sought in places where it was never meant to be found. Lao Tzu gently pointed in another direction. Instead of becoming someone new, he invited us to return, not to the past, but to the quiet awareness that exists before the mind begins dividing life into success and failure, gain and loss, enough and not enough. This awareness is strangely familiar. You may have noticed it without realizing what it was. It appears for a brief moment as you watch sunlight move across a room. It arrives when you pause beside a river without needing to be anywhere else. It is present in the silence after laughter has faded, or in the stillness of early morning before the world begins asking anything of you. In those moments, nothing has been added. Nothing has been achieved, yet something feels complete. The mind often overlooks these experiences because they seem too ordinary. It is trained to seek what is exciting, dramatic, or new. Quiet rarely captures its attention, and yet the deepest parts of life have always spoken softly. The rhythm of breathing, the changing light of evening, the steady unfolding of a flower. None of these hurry to prove their importance. Nature never struggles to be present. A bird does not sing while worrying about tomorrow's song. The moon does not compare its light with the stars. The forest does not question whether it has accomplished enough before night falls. Everything simply inhabits its own moment completely. Human beings possess the same capacity, but it is often buried beneath layers of thought. We mistake thinking about life for living it. We replay conversations that have already ended. We rehearse futures that may never arrive. The present becomes so crowded with imagination that we forget it is the only place where life is actually unfolding. Presence is not something that needs to be manufactured. It is what remains whenever the constant commentary begins to soften. It is the quiet recognition of this breath, this step, this moment, exactly as it is. There is nothing extraordinary about it, and perhaps that is why it is so easily missed. Acceptance grows from the same place. It does not mean approving of every circumstance or giving up when life becomes difficult. It means no longer exhausting yourself by denying reality before responding to it. A calm mind can act with remarkable clarity because it is not spending its strength arguing with what already exists. There is a subtle freedom in this. When awareness becomes spacious, thoughts continue to appear, but they no longer carry the same authority. Emotions still rise and fall, yet they move like weather across an open sky instead of defining the sky itself. Joy is welcomed without clinging. Sorrow is experienced without believing it will last forever. Life continues to change, but something deeper remains undisturbed. Perhaps this is why peace can never truly be created. Anything created can also be lost. Peace is closer to a remembering than an achievement. It is the quiet recognition of what has always been here beneath the noise, beneath the striving, beneath every story we have told about ourselves. The world will continue to move quickly. There will still be responsibilities, unexpected changes, and moments of uncertainty. None of those disappear. What changes is the place from which you meet them. Instead of reacting from constant tension, you begin responding from a deeper stillness. And from that stillness, even the ordinary moments of everyday life begin to carry a different kind of quiet wisdom. When the mind is no longer carrying every unnecessary burden, life itself begins to feel different. The world has not slowed down. Responsibilities have not vanished. Difficult people still exist. Unexpected problems still arrive without warning. Yet something subtle has changed. What once felt like a battle now feels more like a current that can be understood instead of resisted. The change first appears in ordinary moments, the ones that rarely seem important. A conversation no longer becomes a contest to be right. Listening grows easier because the need to defend every opinion has softened. Silence between words no longer feels uncomfortable. There is room for another person's perspective without feeling that your own identity is under threat. Work changes as well, though not in the way many expect. The desire to do meaningful work remains, but the desperate need to prove yourself begins to loosen its grip. Effort becomes cleaner. Attention settles more fully on the task itself instead of constantly reaching toward recognition. Ironically, when the fear of failure becomes quieter, the quality of what you create often becomes richer. The same quiet shift enters relationships. Expectations become lighter. Instead of trying to shape people into the versions you wish they would become, you begin meeting them where they truly are. This does not mean accepting harmful behavior or abandoning healthy boundaries. It means releasing the exhausting belief that lasting peace depends on controlling another person's heart. Even moments of waiting begin to change. Waiting in traffic, waiting for news, waiting for an answer that has not yet arrived. These pauses once felt like interruptions, as though life had temporarily stopped. Now they become part of life itself. The urge to rush every moment toward the next one slowly gives way to the simple experience of being where you already are. Failure also begins to lose its sharpest edges. It still hurts. Disappointment remains real. Yet failure no longer becomes a verdict on your worth. It becomes one event within a much larger journey. Because identity is no longer built entirely upon success, setbacks lose the power to define the person experiencing them. Success changes too. It becomes something to appreciate rather than something to cling to. Moments of achievement are welcomed with gratitude instead of anxiety about how to preserve them forever. There is joy without possession, fulfillment without fear. This quiet confidence is easy to misunderstand. It does not come from believing everything will go according to plan. It comes from trusting that whatever arrives can be met with clarity. Confidence no longer depends on controlling life. It grows from knowing that your peace does not have to disappear every time life changes direction. Patience naturally follows, not the patience that forces itself to remain calm while boiling inside, but the patience that understands growth has its own rhythm. A seed cannot be hurried into becoming a forest. Healing cannot be commanded to happen overnight. Wisdom itself ripens slowly, almost invisibly, through countless ordinary moments that seem insignificant, until one day you realize you are no longer living the way you once did, perhaps the greatest. Transformation is the space that appears between experience and response. Something unexpected happens. A difficult comment is spoken. A plan falls apart. In the past, reaction would have arrived almost instantly. Now there is a brief moment of stillness. Within that small space lives freedom. The freedom to choose understanding instead of anger, curiosity instead of fear, patience instead of urgency. This is not perfection. There will still be days when old habits return, when the mind becomes restless and the heart forgets what it has learned. But even then, something remains different. You recognize the restlessness more quickly. You no longer mistake it for your true nature. You know there is always a quieter place waiting beneath the noise. Life begins to resemble the river Lao Tzu admired so deeply. It continues moving around obstacles without losing its direction. It accepts changing seasons without believing that winter will last forever. It does not resist the path unfolding before it. And because it does not fight every bend in the journey, it arrives with a quiet strength that force could never produce. In living this way, peace no longer feels like a rare experience reserved for special moments. It becomes the atmosphere in which ordinary life unfolds. And with that realization, every lesson quietly points toward one final truth, a truth so simple that it is often hidden in plain sight, yet powerful enough to change the way an entire life is lived. There comes a moment when the search begins to lose its certainty, not because the world has changed, but because something inside grows tired of chasing what always seems just beyond reach. You may still wake to the same responsibilities, walk the same streets, and speak with the same people. Yet the feeling beneath it all is different. The urgency that once seemed necessary begins to soften. In its place appears a quiet question that asks for no immediate answer. What if life was never asking you to become someone else? What if it was patiently waiting for you to stop running past it? The wisdom that has carried us here does not end with a new belief. It ends with a different way of seeing. Lao Tzu never promised a world without difficulty. Storms still arrive. Rivers still flood. Autumn still asks every tree to release what it can no longer keep. Nothing in nature escapes change, and yet nothing in nature appears offended by it. There is no argument with the seasons. There is only participation. Perhaps this is the simplicity that has been overlooked for so long. We often imagine peace as a reward waiting at the end of perfect circumstances. We tell ourselves that one more achievement, one more solution, or one more change will finally allow us to rest. But peace does not patiently wait behind tomorrow. It quietly waits beneath the struggle to control today. The strange thing is that life has never demanded perfection before offering its beauty. A sunrise appears whether anyone notices it or not. Rain falls without asking who deserves it. A child can laugh before understanding the world, and an old tree continues growing without comparing itself to the forest beside it. Existence moves with a quiet confidence that asks for nothing extra. It simply expresses what it already is. Human beings often forget this because the mind has learned to measure instead of experience. It counts accomplishments, compares identities, predicts outcomes, and guards imagined futures. In doing so, it slowly places a distance between itself and the simple reality unfolding in each ordinary moment. The distance is invisible, yet it becomes the source of so much exhaustion. What if the life you have been searching for has never been hidden? What if it has been covered only by the constant effort to improve every experience before allowing yourself to fully enter it? There is an extraordinary freedom in discovering that nothing essential has been missing. The mind may continue creating stories about what should happen next, but awareness no longer has to believe every one of them. This does not mean giving up ambition or refusing growth. Rivers still flow toward the sea. Seeds still become forests. Life continues unfolding. The difference is subtle but profound. Growth no longer comes from fear of being incomplete. It grows naturally, the way branches reach towards sunlight without anxiety. Action remains. Yet struggle begins to disappear from within the action itself. Something remarkable happens when resistance fades. Gratitude stops being something you practice and becomes something you notice. Ordinary conversations carry more warmth. Silence no longer feels empty. Waiting loses its sharp edges. Even uncertainty becomes easier to hold because you no longer demand that every path reveal itself immediately. Trust quietly replaces urgency. This is why simplicity cannot be measured by the size of a home, the number of possessions, or the pace of a calendar. A person surrounded by very little may still feel trapped by endless wanting. Another may carry many responsibilities yet move through them with remarkable ease. The difference is not found outside. It lives in the relationship between awareness and experience. There is a gentle irony in all of this. The more tightly we hold life, the more fragile it feels. The more completely we allow it to move, the more deeply connected we become to it. Nothing valuable is lost by relaxing the grip. What disappears is only the fear that convinced us we were separate from the very life we hoped to protect. Maybe this is the quiet invitation Lao Tzu has been offering across centuries. Not an escape from the world, but a return to it. Not through effort, but through presence. Not by becoming someone extraordinary, but by remembering the quiet wisdom that has always existed beneath the noise. When that remembering begins, the world itself does not suddenly become easier. Yet it somehow becomes lighter. The same wind touches your face. The same sky stretches overhead. The same life continues unfolding with all its uncertainty, but you are no longer standing against it. You are standing within it, and perhaps that is what it has always meant to live simply. Not to own less for its own sake, not to expect less from life, but to need less from every passing moment before allowing yourself to feel whole. Then peace no longer appears as something waiting somewhere in the future. It becomes the silent companion that was walking beside you from the very beginning, patiently waiting for the moment you finally stopped fighting the road beneath your feet.